It's in Baltimore. Summer, my host used to hate doing radio this week because there's not a whole lot to talk about. It's the All-Star game, and this one doesn't even count. But I got this guy coming on right now who's going to make all of our conversations count. While we're down in Miami, the great Maury Brown of Forbes and Bizball. Maury will be up in Portland, Oregon, chilling out and enjoying the best summer place I could think of up there in the great Pacific Northwest. We welcome Maury Brown, one of our defending champions and favorite guests, back onto the program. It is the All-Star game, Maury. I remember when this used to be a BFD.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's an interesting time right now. I mean, I was surprised, Nestor. I mean, you know, because the fans do the voting now, and you can vote like a million times, right? I was really surprised to only see Wade Davis of the Cubs be, you know, really on the roster. I mean, you've got a lot of young players, and I think that it'll make for interesting baseball. How it works nationally for ESPN with being with it in Miami and whatnot, I don't know. I think the Home Run Derby has some, you know, pull to it. But it'll be interesting to watch. A lot of young talent and a lot of really good young talent.
Well, and I think that, you know, I've talked to several people. I talked to Joe Posnanski earlier about it. And is this the 71 Detroit All-Star game, right? I mean, this is Luke's first All-Star game. We're going to be in Miami all week. He's excited about it. You know, I think this is one of those ones where 20, 25 years, hopefully we live that long, all of us, Maury, we look back and say there might be 10, 12, 15 Hall of Famers in this game. At least guys that have gotten on that first step, that first track of the first 2 or 3 or 4 years of saying, you know, that's worthy. There's certainly a lot of these names here.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I would completely agree with you and Joe on it. Look, you know, every baseball goes through cycles. All sports do. But I really love what is going on with the game right now. And I think that it's going to be an interesting time. I think a lot of us will look back on this because next year, some of these players are going to be free agents, and I think that they're going to have different zip codes. And you know, Harper being one of them, and you know, you look around, and I just think that the Yankees, I think, are one of those stories right now that are just, I think, really interesting to watch. I don't think anybody really anticipated them having their prospects come in line as fast as they did. But once again, I think that's a great analogy of that Detroit All-Star game. I think that it'll be very interesting to see how many of these players are really because whether it's pitchers that haven't clued in on hitters or whether they really are the ones that are going to be there for the distance. I think that we're going to have some perennial All-Stars here for a while now, and I think that it'll make it interesting here in the future.
I know you follow me out on Facebook and on Twitter and whatnot. You know I've released the Peter Principles here lately. You know, and I think Peter Angelos, quite frankly, is one of the biggest scumbags I've come in contact with in my lifetime, quite frankly, as before this clown got elected president. But I tell you what, man, Loria is in Chapter 1. He's all over Chapter 1. He finished in second place. Baltimore could have been treated to 25 years of Jeffrey Loria. The one thing he wouldn't have been able to do here was swindle a new stadium out of Baltimore because we already had a new stadium here that he would have paid for. But, boy, when you look up sleazebag MLB owner, you know, he's going to be leading the chapters in Lords of the Realm, probably even before Angelos, quite frankly.
Yeah, and I'd have to agree with you. I mean, I've been hammering on him for a long time. He's just, you know, look, I view the way owners are as this. They are stewards of a team. They do not define a team in perpetuity. The team itself is bigger than any owner. And I think that you can look at the Dodgers as a great example of what Frank McCourt did that was certainly not good. And people will forget about it. And people will eventually forget about Jeffrey Loria, I hope. And I think that this sale is really going to be one of those things to where there will be a lot that will be looked at. I was just reading John Heyman had a piece on it. Jorge Mas looks like a guy that could be the one that could really purchase it, mostly because he has quite a bit of money available to him, but he's local. So I think that the money was the biggest problem for this thing. When you're trying to cobble together, 40% of it being cash, and you're looking at 1.3, 1.5, $1 billion.
It's a whole different kind of buyer now. I remember around here, everybody was like, well, Cal Ripken will buy the team one day. Where's Cal Ripken peeing out, $1.5 billion? I mean, it's just, this was talked about 15 or 20 years ago. The sport's taken such a jump, in that way that there are, quite frankly, few suitors at this point at these prices, right?
Yeah, they're not. I mean, they've got to be corporate people. Look, I really harped on and was really concerned about Jim Crane, who eventually, he tried to get the Cubs. He tried to get the Rangers. He finally wound up with the Astros, and I was really concerned about him, but he's actually been a good steward of the game. Now, granted, the guy played baseball. He played it, collegiately, but still, I mean, there are people that I think can do a good job running clubs, doing it, that might not be the family-type owners that we think of. You're not going to get those people anymore. It is not possible anymore. It is going to be very, very deep-pocketed corporate people.
All the more like when an Ilitch dies, right? You lose an Ilitch, you lose like a real sportsman. I was reading the Charlie Finley book, earlier this year by Turbo. Great book, by the way, on the Oakland A's. And I know, you had a lot of background in that area growing up out there. By the way, Maury Brown joining us here from Forbes and Bizball. Maury, you can follow him, and a billion people do and should. But we really are in a different space now where Loria portended himself to be that way, and sort of that insider flip thing that happened with John Henry a number of years ago when they took the Expos back into receivership and the Major League Baseball took it under control. A lot of the pieces in the shell games have moved here. I mean, here locally, we talk about the Masson money all the time. We're now at that point for the trading deadline for the Orioles where they have to really poop or get off the pot with Machado. And, I mean, look, the Nats aren't going to move Bryce Harper, but this Masson money will define who signs whom. I mean, the Nationals will say, we won, we're going to give that money to Bryce Harper, or the Orioles are going to say, we lost, we don't have it to give to Machado anymore. And Laurie has been lying for, 2 decades now in Miami, and there really is a little bit of the sort of transparency of, are you trying to win or are you not? The Cubs for years didn't try to win and made a lot of money, famously as the Tribsters, right?
Yeah, and I will say this, so of course I'm not going to defend Laurie at all. But look, I mean, one of the biggest problems with this sale is that the television money is not great. The attendance has not been great. Sponsorships have been difficult.
The brand's not great. The stadium's not great. The location's not great, right?
Well, I'll say this. So, the facility is better than it was, right? I mean, it was just better than in Joe Robbie Stadium. It just was it's better than that.
But they've also moved it 45 more minutes away for the people who would go to the games.
Yeah. Well, I think that you can get those people back. And, I really do. I think that I just don't think that I think that Loria and Sampson both just absolutely poisoned the well. And I think that it's going to require somebody. Look, it can be done. I mean, now granted, it's the Dodgers, right? I mean, people forget just how bad the Dodgers had been run into the ground by Frank McCourt and how bad attendance was hit. Now, I was talking to people like Alyssa Milano, the actress, right, who is a huge background in sports and in baseball and had been a season ticket holder forever. And she's like, I'm not going to go. I refuse to go if this is the guy that's going to run it. And then those people came back. People will forget.
I'm familiar with that because I'm with Angelos. I'm that guy. I mean, I'm never going to give him money freely, ever. Not after what he's done to me, not after what he's done to the city. I can't justify pulling my credit card out and buying $32 tickets and giving it to him. When the games are on TV, and I don't give him money, famously. That's my protest, I got this shirt for free, by the way, Maury, so just so you know.
Yeah. Well, owners come and go. Look, I mean, whether the Angelos family continues to run it, I think that's a real possibility. But look, man, there are sales are going to happen, and they can change. Whether are the Marlins going to become the Dodgers or the Yankees? Of course not. Well, could they be run better? Can they potentially get a naming rights deal? Can they get a better TV deal? I think that will absolutely happen. So, look, I think that anything is better. It's addition by subtraction with Loria.
He is Maury Brown. He is Bizball Maury on Twitter and, of course, at Forbes and any place baseball is discussed. Dude, the last 2 weeks I have seen stories, and every time I see a story about the fences behind home plate, not the outfield fences and the home runs, but foul balls, fan security, fan safety. We saw a bat go into the stands the other day and guys running around the bases and first baseman's watching the bat instead of the ball and a ball in play and guys running around the base. We're starting to see this story that you started to cover really first about fan safety, and we saw this in hockey, and I know that this is something being talked about at the All-Star game this week, right?
It is, and I'm sure that it will be a hot topic, mostly because, there's a councilman in New York that said, look, my job is to worry about the safety of people that go out to, facilities that are partially owned by the public. And to that, I think that we need to have extended netting. And it worked. It did what I think it was intended to. The Mets are going to have netting up after the All-Star break. They're going to use the All-Star break to install it. Sounds like the Yankees are now looking at trying to make it happen. And I really think that it just continues to do. Look, I mean, this is in the minors. Now I can question, everybody can question whether you should bring an infant to a game. But an 11-month-old kid got hit square in the head with a ball, and I'm surprised it didn't kill him. Now, look, everybody's going to say you should be paying, get off your phone, pay attention to the game and everything. But look, when a ball comes screaming, basically, head high into the stands over the dugouts, you have very little time to react. I don't care how close you're paying attention. Plus, now the league itself has things like, at the ballpark where you can go like, hey, I want to order up my food, or I can check my stats. I mean, they encourage this stuff. Plus, you have big jumbotrons. Plus, we really are catering to families where we have, play structures and everything for the kids. It is very hard to not see that we have reached a tipping point by which we extend the netting. And look, there are ways to lower it so that you can have it during BP. The players can still toss balls to fans, and they'll get used to it. The highest paid seats in the ballpark are behind home, and we have had netting there forever and a day. People got used to it with hockey. They'll get used to it down the lines because, Nestor, there's this. 9, and after the Mets, after the All-Star break, now 1/3 of the league has extended netting. I have little doubt in my mind that we are at close to half or more, potentially maybe most of the league by the end of this upcoming off season. It's going to be here. It's time. Manfred is behind this in a way. He's trying to do it while, of course, worrying about how the clubs see this, whether they're going to offend the fans. But time and again, they put it up. A couple of people asked to move a few seats away, and they forget about it. It's kind of like the intentional walk. Look, we no longer have the 4-pitch walk. People no longer talk about that either. They'll quit talking about extended netting. I'm not kidding. If they do it at the beginning of the season in every ballpark in the country, by the end of May, no one's talking about it anymore. It'll just be part and parcel with the league.
Maury, one thing you've talked about and written about a lot in the business of baseball, and as it relates to television, revenue, eyes on the game, young people, pace of play, and I know of all the things that Rob Manfred is passionate about, and I'm sure we'll be hearing that out of Miami this week, is how do we make the game move along at a pace that we can find acceptable?
Yeah, man, and this is something, so first of all, there's a big difference between the time of game and the pace of it. Pace it is crisp, it moves. I think that John Thorne, MLB's official historian, said it best. I can watch a good, crisp-moving 4-hour game better than I can watch a bad 2.5-hour game. And the point being here is that if pace is moving along, if there's at least some decorum of action that is going on, then we can do this. But I'll tell you, man, I mean, the times have crept up. I mean, it's incremental. It's like 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, that instead was supposed to kind of try and speed up. There are some ideas here that I think are going to absolutely happen. The league has the option to go ahead and implement rules without the players' approval. Now, Rob told me this at the beginning of the season, that he really did not want to do this without approval from the players. But they have the option to do it, and I think they're going to go for it. I think that it'll be this. I think you're going to see the strike zone be lowered a little bit because we're starting to see so many strikeouts. We're going to see, I think we're going to see a pitch clock. I absolutely believe that. And I think that they're going to limit the mound visits. Now, how that comes into play will likely be early in the game. Later in the game where you're more strategically aligned and you're trying to potentially win closer in, and you're going through relievers, I think that they might figure out some way around it. The other thing I think that they should do is cut a minute, maybe a minute and a half out of commercials and go to a bug. Now, we see this in auto racing, right, where they'll go, the commercial break is basically they go and put the game up in a small window, and run the commercial otherwise, and you never get a break in the action. They do this occasionally in soccer as well. So I think that you're going to try and see something like that. I think that you're going to have to get to that point. Because, look, man, I mean, I'm watching these games today, which, of course, I think every pitcher, it seemed like, that wasn't going to the All-Star game was thinking about going on vacation or something. Whether it was the Pirates absolutely getting to John Lester or whether it was the Astros. I mean, we had some really bad baseball today, and that creates long games. So, I think that...
And no one likes a 19-1 game. That doesn't help anyone, right?
No, it doesn't help. It doesn't help the length of the game. It doesn't help fan interest. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that, right? I mean, if a pitcher is going to get lit up, a pitcher is going to get lit up. And there's nothing that you can do about that. I mean, fans might be going, hey, what about replays? That's another thing. Okay, fine. Shorten that up somehow. Don't take away replays. I don't agree with that at all. Get the calls right. But, I mean, there are ways to try and tighten it up a little bit. I've seen collegiate games as well as minor league games with a pitch clock. And I'm telling you right now, after, it was right there, and for about 2 innings, I couldn't help but focus on it. And then after about the 3rd inning, I completely forgot about it. And
it's going to be something. Pitch clock's going to be something that's going to take a lot to get used to for a guy like me. But the getting used to it is, if these guys actually deliver the ball quicker, it will pick up the pace, and they will play the game faster, which they've been trying to do for 25 years. I mean, we go back to Giamatti trying to speed the game up, and Uberoth. I mean, you can Google that stuff. It's sitting there. They haven't been able to do it, and if anything, they haven't even been able to stabilize it. It's gone the wrong way for the longest time, right?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing here, and this is something to really think about, the true baseball fan, the one that goes to the game, when I'm at a game, the time is irrelevant because it becomes a much more social event. You're sitting there, you're sitting in the sun, you're with friends, you're drinking beer, you're watching the game.
But there is a point where you look up. If it's 10 after 9 and you're in the 4th inning of a 7:05 game and you got to work the next day, I mean, it is a bummer. I mean, I'll say that. It's a bummer,
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly that. I'm thinking of other stuff. Television, it really is where it impacts us. Right? I mean, right now, and the reason for this, people are like, why don't they just leave the damn thing alone? Why do we have to have this? And the reason for it is this. There is just so much more competition for your eyes now, for your interests, and you're easily moved off of programming when it's not compelling.
My wife will go to the Food Network anytime Jimenez is pitching, and, it's 4-0 in the 2nd inning. I'm getting Guy Fieri or, Giada or somebody. I am. I'm being honest with you. And honestly, with bad pitching, when it's a 3rd inning and it's 8-21 and you're like – and the game's 6-1. I mean, it's hard to stay compelled. I mean, and we've lived with that this year here specifically in Baltimore because it's been really bad.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a couple of pitchers that are taking like 30 seconds to pitch. Right? That's ridiculous. I mean, when you can go and basically go watch, I don't know. I mean, you can go pick whatever you want. You can go flip over to something else and go watch 5 minutes of a basketball game and then flip back over and you're like, holy cow, man, we're still at the same at bat. I think that that's a problem. And when I say it's a problem, I'm saying that people will lose interest. Look, right now, Nestor, I'll tell you, between the talk about the ball being juiced, so we're having more home runs and we're having more strikeouts, we have less balls technically in play than we have ever had before, that right now reminds me a whole lot of the 60s. And so, look, I mean, sure, I could watch it, but if I was to pick the armpit of Major League Baseball, it's the 1960s. And even then it was great, right? I will watch it. You will watch it. We will continue to watch the sport as it is. But when I look back at it historically right now, I sit there and I go, man, it's good. We've got some great storylines and some really good players. But when I think about the regular season, I'm like, it's just, It's maybe it's because I'm watching too many bad Mariner games, but it is one of those things where it's difficult, I think, sometimes to get engaged with it. So it's an interesting year. I think it will be really something next year between a couple of things. There's going to be this talk about the baseball, and I'll be very surprised if Rob Manfred doesn't address this at the All-Star break.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up with you, too, because that really is the big story of the first half. As much as it's been the Yankees or the Astros or the Dodgers or good things or young players, the home runs have, this is getting out of hand. And the one thing that they can't say, Tom Verducci from 20 years ago is, well, they've done their best with the steroids thing. I mean, no one's accusing it outwardly of being people juiced. We now have steroided balls, for crying out loud, right?
Well, I think that there's a couple of things here, right? I mean, so what you've got is the velocity. We've got pitcher velocity going up. I mean, remember when it was like, holy cow, somebody threw 100 miles an hour? I mean, this was like a big thing. And now we see it all the time. We see a lot more speed. We see a lot, the velocity of some of these pitches. Well, man, and batters have gotten a lot better. So, of course, what's happened is information is getting its way to all the players on both sides, right? But those batters, when a pitcher makes a mistake and they see one, we got guys teeing off on them. So if the ball's moving at a high rate of speed and you've got good bat speed, the logic is it's going to travel out of the park. So you've got that. There's, of course, this study now where people are saying they think that the ball is wrapped. Namely, they think that the seam itself has gotten lower, which means it takes less drag on the ball, and that's how it's been juiced. The league denies this upside and down the other. I wouldn't be surprised if in the off season, much like they did with maple bats, and they will do some kind of study that will say, here's all the balls, they're all traveling at this velocity, they'll do it controlled, or something to that effect. But it is one of those things where it's a discussion because the pitchers have become so good, and yet the hitting has become all power-based. And it's not juicing. The players aren't, look, somebody's juicing. There always is somebody juicing. But it's not a culture like we saw certainly in the 2000s. So, I don't know. It's an interesting time to watch the game. The shift is another thing that I think has changed a lot. You just can't really poke the ball through. Batters haven't figured out how to go the other way yet, and I think that that's something that else needs to be addressed. I do not advocate making the shift illegal. I know Rob thought about that, but he talks openly, just has ideas. I don't think he ever thought seriously about it. But it is one of those things to where I think that the batters are going to have to figure it out. Their batting averages will go up. Everybody wants to do that. That helps them with their contracts when their contracts come up.
He is Maury Brown. He is Bizball Maury out at Forbes and on Twitter as well, always talking the great game of baseball. All right, last thing for you. It's the rage here in Baltimore, the Machado trading deadline, Orioles as buyers or sellers or whatever the hell they are. They're a bad baseball team right now, and if you're not selling right now, I don't know when you would sell. I don't know how bad things would have to be and where the contract and the money situation would have to be on a guy like Machado. Now, I'm not saying you give him away like he's hitting 228, even though he is. I'm saying that you go out and try to fleece. I mean, this is a time for fleecing and growing and extending your minor league organization, which is horrible, and taking a little cue from what the Yankees did last year.
Yeah, I would not. I'm sure. Look, they have to be fielding calls. There's no way that they're not. I would say that it's a weird time right now, Nestor. There seems to be some really good teams and a whole lot of bad. I mean, there's just I know we just brought up today, but today I think was kind of emblematic of the whole season. There's just some really bad divisions out there right now. And when bad is actually good for some teams, right? They'll go, well, wait a second. Nobody's really clearly taking the lead here. Nobody really owns it here. Is it the Red Sox? Is it the Yankees? Maybe they slip. Nobody seems to be able to put together anything strong. Nothing like we're seeing with the Astros or maybe the Nationals and now the Dodgers. But it is something to where I think that there are enough teams out there that the money is in place where they go, you know what? Let's just do it. I don't want to be a seller. I don't see the point in doing that. Unless you're the A's, or I could certainly see maybe Seattle. I mean, some of these teams, and maybe not even Seattle, I think that they move up and down. It becomes very difficult if you're a general manager to go, wow, it's just none of the teams are really standing out right here. Maybe we have a shot at the wild card. And others have noticed this as well, that it's a very odd time for the market to try and figure out who are the buyers and who are the sellers. And that's why I think that you could get a case of atrophy with the Orioles. Look, I don't know whether they can retain him. I don't know if Machado even wants to stay. And that's something that is also important. Everybody will go, oh, Peter screwed up another deal. He got involved in it. They just can't seem to ink the deal. Look, if a player wants to move and the market, I'm sure the market would be fairly good for him. It's going to be hard if he wants to go to a different zip code. So
he's going to play wherever he wants to play, kind of, sort of, right? I mean,
he kind of. I mean, look, his numbers are not as stellar as they have been. he's still, I think, somebody that would go, if I'm a general manager, I'm looking at him. I mean, if I need somebody at third base, I'm like, gosh, there's really Machado and there's kind of like everybody else in some ways, because he has been so dynamic. He has done well at the plate. He has been spectacular at third base. So I would sit there and say, look, I think that a change of culture might be good for him. You put some other good pieces around him, and suddenly he comes back to life. We see this time and again in baseball and in other sports, right? So, I think that there will be a number of teams that would be interested in him.
He is Maury Brown and Bizball Maury out on Twitter and skipping the All-Star game. Don't worry, Maury. There are no stone crabs in Florida right now. You're not missing anything other than heat and humidity. Everything you got up there in Portland, Oregon right now. So always great to check in with you,
It's going to be 90 degrees. I'm playing some great music this weekend at a big outdoor festival. So while I'll miss it, I'm really going to miss it because, they're baseball writers. They're going to have both Rob and Tony Clark from the MLBPA do a session just with the BBWA writers, and I really would have loved to have been there for that. But it's a coast away. I'll probably be there for the winter meetings.
Chill out up there in Portland. Get with Shoot the Thrill and go play some rock and roll and some AC/DC. We'll be on the lookout for that as well. Always great to check in with you, Maury. Have a great summer, man.
All right, you too. Same to you, Nestor.
Pray for us. We're Orioles fans, okay?
You got it, man.
He is Bizball Maury out on Twitter, as well as Maury Brown on Forbes for all things the business of baseball. And he also loves the game, which is why we love having Maury on. And he's a hell of a tour guide of all things Portland, especially as it comes to craft beer, which as well as coffee and donuts. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from wherever you are, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and wherever Miami and the All-Star Game takes us this week, we will be there. You can always email me, nasty@WNST.net. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.